Embarrassing for who? For you or for me?
No. Dude, did I not do the right
Yes.
thing? We are back here today, and I got a fantastic guest here today. I can't believe it. He doesn't even know what I'm about to say, but I brought him on here today, and the main reason why is because I see a lot of people who are previous 9-to-5ers who are afraid to take the leap of faith and bet on themselves to go into full entrepreneurship. And that's what actually Trevor Hicks has done, right? Hicks?
Yep.
Hicks has done. He has actually skipped through all the pitfalls already, and he is going through and making imperfect action. So I brought him on here today so he can share his story. So welcome back, guys, from closings to capital. I'm your host here, Javier Paredes, and I got my special guest here, Trevor Hicks here, who's about to tell you guys how he went from a 9-to-5, being a PT, working years over years, to now living his real estate dream.
Yeah, man.
Welcome, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate you for having me on.
Give us a little background about yourself.
Yeah. So, as Javier mentioned, I'm Trevor Hicks. I am a W-2 doctor of physical therapy turned real estate investor / entrepreneur, because that's not all we do. But when I say we, my wife and I do wedding photography, videography, as well as other corporate photography shoots as well.
Okay.
And then I also still do work part-time physical therapy. I've got a license. I have lots of school that I kind of refuse to put to the side, at least just yet. But I've turned off that W-2 actually out of necessity last November, when that perfect W-2 kind of ended very abruptly. So out of necessity, I reflected on it for a couple months, and then come January, about a month and a half later, after kind of sitting and realizing that I was enjoying time with the family almost too much, I realized that wasn't the life I wanted to go back to. I wanted to have the flexibility to walk my kids to school every day, tuck them in, and not have to worry about anybody else's schedule. And I also saw the skill set that I had as far as entrepreneurship and some of the things from my past life, not just the W-2 and being a physical therapist, but also working in the hospitality space, from weddings to serving tables to bartending. That's what I did all throughout college. Just the people skills that I really had. And honestly, it took meeting you, and I'm sure we'll get into that at some point. That was my first kind of big leap of faith, actually, before I left my W-2. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. But yeah,
wow.
Excited to
amazing, dude. So, you're telling everyone right now that you are essentially articulating the life that you dream to live. And it's happening right now, right? Through real estate.
Yeah. And
you're a PT prior. So how many years of schooling did you do to become a PT?
Yeah, good question. I did not know I wanted to be a PT right into school. I always thought, growing up, I liked sports, and I liked taking things apart and putting them back together, or figuring out how things worked, and finding a solution to a problem. A lot of people in my family, my dad is one of 7 kids, so he had a lot of uncles that were engineers. And so I always really enjoyed that. I always really enjoyed space and rockets. I'm like, oh, okay, so I want to go be an engineer. So I started school. I actually switched majors quite a few times, which, again, is kind of stereotypical for my personality of switching up things every now and again, and just kind of getting bored. I would learn something. I felt like I was really good at it, and I could get good at it fairly quickly, and I liked acquiring new skills and meeting new people. So I went from 2 different kinds of engineering to anthropology major, to then I was pre-med. I thought I wanted to go be a doctor, medical doctor. And I actually went and sat with a medical doctor for a couple of days, and I realized it's not at all what I wanted to do.
Nah.
Not at all. Kind of same thing with engineering. Engineering, I thought, you're going to work on a project and be sitting in an office, and it wasn't the peopling that I wanted to do. And that's my term for that, peopling. I wanted to be in front of people just like this every day, shaking hands, and kind of experiencing them and getting to know their problems so I could solve it. I was always, and again, this is coming from people telling me this as a kid, was always super compassionate, could always kind of feel how other people were feeling just from their emotions, their inflection, their tonality, and their voice. And I really got to know that with PT because I actually I went and I shadowed my aunt, She's an occupational therapist. She works with PT. She works with speech therapists. And I went and I shadowed her. I was still kind of deciding whether I want to go to medical school or PT school at that point.
And how old were you when this was all happening?
Let's see. That would have been about 21, 22.
22. And you're in mid-30s now?
I'm 36 now.
36, okay.
So yeah, I was about 22. I was deciding on when and what to do. And when I went and sat and I shadowed with her that day and got to see PTs at work, OTs at work, and it was actually more in a hospital setting, which isn't what I ended up practicing and specializing in. But I loved the interaction, the time they got to spend with their patients, whereas you go into a physician's office and a lot of time they're forced by productivity standards, which most healthcare professionals are. Unfortunately, it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. That's another thing that drove me out of that career path, was I just didn't feel like I had the time that I needed to make that interaction.
Right.
It's not always the exercise that you give them or the stretch or whatever. Sometimes it's how you make them feel. It's how you get them to buy into what you're selling them, and you are essentially selling them that. Because some people would come in and they'd say, I don't know why I'm here. My doctor sent me here. This isn't going to do any good. I need surgery. Their mind's already made up. So a lot of times that connection, honestly, a lot of those I really enjoyed, because then I was like, oh, okay, I got to break through this wall. I got to break through this barrier. This is a challenge. It's not just somebody who's like, I know this is going to help me. So yeah, that was what I did for a long time. So PT school, jump forward. That was 3 years, 9 semesters of PT school. I graduated in 2014. Jumped right into patient care from then until about 2023. It would have been when I left that full-time PT position. I worked with Advent Health for a long time. Loved my work there. Loved the people I worked with there. It was just starting to getting to that burnout phase. I needed something new. I needed something different. From managing people and also treating patients. Right. I was ready for some change. And my ceiling for earning also had pretty much, in my eyes, for the amount that I was working and the amount of production that I was giving, and I was always a high performer, I had capped that. Right. And I was starting to get frustrated and kind of beating my head against the wall. So I was looking to other streams of revenue. That was about the time I transitioned. I transitioned to more of a director role for a nonprofit here in town, and I really loved that role. Made more money, had a lot more free time. I could work from home. I wasn't in front of patients all day, every day, and I got to still, chase my passion, which is when I got introduced into real estate into about the end of 2023. So, little under 2 years ago, got into a couple of smaller communities, found out about PACE and Sub 2, started, absorbing as much free content as I could. Because in my mind, again, the way I was brought up, it was not always like, oh, I just give out money. It was, no, it's there for free. Of course, I'm smart. I'll figure it out. Until I really started to take the advice of other people in the group. I actually did join a transactional funding group. Thought that was something I wanted to do, was lend money. I had money in IRA and things like that from years of working. Correct. Had some savings built up. I was like, oh, I'll do that. I can do that passively while I still do my W-2. It's not all passive, right? As most people unfortunately start to find out when they get into this, like, oh, it's passive investment. Not always.
Let me rewind for a little bit for a second. How does it feel? Let the audience know, how does it feel for you to go from something you cultivated and worked years and years and years and spent time, and not only time, energy, and a lot of money, and I'm sure in student loan debt, to go and have that risk tolerance that you have? And I want you guys to understand, one reason why I brought Trevor on here today is because I see the way he moves. I see the way he pivots. He is getting his hands dirty in something that he's never done before and taking imperfect action. Not having all the answers and really getting his hands into whatever he can real estate wise. And I've seen that in you, and that's why I really wanted to bring you on here today, because how did you go from the mindset of having a family, working into the PT, for years, Avid Health, to walking away from that essentially? Because even though you do it a little bit still, and you still hold, a little bit of a stake in whatever PT company that you might be with now, but how do you overcome that? Because I know what the viewers are thinking right now. They're probably thinking like, a lot of people are on the sideline because they do have a family and they don't want to step away from that. But you essentially have stepped away from that 100% and then pivoted into a whole entire new ecosystem, which is real estate now. It has nothing to do with what your prior knowledge was. So you're not really, and nothing really correlates together is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like I could see if you went from like maybe a property manager into a real estate investor or
Yeah.
like a realtor into a real estate investor, but you went from PT, 3 years, student loan debt, family, beautiful wife, beautiful kids, 2 kids, a household. How do you get that? Tell me, how does somebody get over that hump, you know?
It's a good question. I think I'm going to answer the first part of your question was how did that feel? And I'd say very scary.
Yeah. Are you still scared?
Yeah, absolutely. Every day. But I have a why that's worth waking up for every day and continue to work for.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately kind of the reason that gave me the strength to walk away. I mentioned an untimely exit from my last job. Dream job, everything was great, right? Well, it wasn't. Apparently behind the scenes, I wasn't what they were going towards. So that day, I can still vividly remember sitting in my new boss's office across from you, just like I am now, and being told that today was my last day. And I was like, oh, shoot, what does this mean? What do I do now? It was 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. I had just had major knee surgery. I was on crutches.
Holidays.
Yeah.
You know, it's the worst time to get laid off or fired.
It was pretty rough. And fired, laid off, whatever you want to call it.
And that was because of what? They don't just get rid of PT people. I mean,
so this was an interesting scenario. I actually got headhunted out of my previous PT position into this director role. So there was no patient care anymore. All that I had done for 10 years was meet a patient at the front door, bring them back, evaluate them, and then treat them for, after knee surgery, whatever ailment, injury they were suffering from.
So your role
my role had changed, and that was by my choice. I switched. I jumped to a nonprofit director role, basically to go and form a healthcare program, a holistic healthcare program.
And this is the role that
It's the role I got fired from.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So I made that jump. The previous CEO.
But that's another company, correct?
Yep.
That's not Advent Health anymore.
Correct.
Okay.
Advent Health in Winter Park had an office, PT office upstairs inside of the Center for Health and Wellbeing. Center for Health and Wellbeing is co-owned by the Winter Park Health Foundation and Advent Health.
Okay.
So I always worked in that building. That's ultimately how I met my former boss. She was a patient of mine during COVID. We vibed really, really well. I gave her a lot of insight of what I thought the building could be, because it's a beautiful building. If you've never been there, it's fantastic. I'd still go back there today and exercise, eat there, the whole 9 yards. They've got some amazing physicians there. I've got great partners there. But I came on board. I started a holistic wellness program. It was overly successful. We hit our goals for that first year, but that CEO retired. New guy comes in. Great guy, great vision. But a lot of things were changing. A new CEO, new leadership comes in. They're going to change some things. So I didn't take it personal, and he was very professional with how he did it. Was it timely? No, of course. But to me, I'm a man of faith, and I believe that was the universe and God's way of telling me, you were not going to make this decision on your own, so I made it for you. Because I was dabbling already in real estate. I was already in my first fix and flip. I had already been in transactional funding from then. Okay. So it wasn't like I was like, oh, shoot, I have no form of income coming. I knew, and again, nothing's for sure, but I knew, we had a good deal there. I had some transactional funding
coming
in.
That was the flip, transactional funding.
Yep.
So you saw that there was money coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, in months to come.
Months to come. Even though that those transactions, because obviously in real estate, things don't work out the 11th hour all the time.
Yeah.
But was that enough confidence booster for you to say, okay, I got a flip going, I might make 40, 50, 60K on, that's down the line. And then I have a transactional funding that I'm doing, that's coming down the line. Was that enough, truthfully, was that enough confidence to get you across the line?
No.
Or did you mentioned God just now, or did you pray on it? What did that look like? Because I know what people are thinking. They're thinking like, I am in a 9-to-5 and I do want to make a pivot to whatever I want to do in my life, because what I like about what Trevor's doing, he's articulating the life that he wants to live. And that's what I did. Yeah. And I see that you're molding your future today. And I love that I get to be a part of that.
Yeah, big part.
And it's beautiful to see that. I love seeing people like you come in the industry, shaking and moving, kicking ass, taking names, and this is just amazing stuff. And that's really like why I wanted to bring you on here today, because to share your story. But I know what the viewers are thinking and the people who are going to listen to this. Like, I don't feel like that's almost deep enough for that's going to really get somebody across the finish line from going their 9 to 5 with a family, having that scarcity mindset, and really getting them across that threshold. And it sounds like to me you have other side gigs that will bring in some income to kind of float the operating expenses of your actual life, like your household, bills and stuff like that. The photography that you're doing, and the other side hustles that you have going on. So is it the side hustles plus that transactional funding and the flip that gave you the confidence? What like really got you across the finish line? Because I don't know if it's that clear,
Yeah, that's a good question. And I would say, I think I mentioned faith, and that's always been a strong point in my life. So had I not been in such a good place in terms of faith, in terms of my relationship with my wife and my kids and my family, I remember going and sitting out in my car after that and being like, how am I going to tell my wife? How am I going to tell my kids? We were supposed to go to an Orlando City game that night that was funded by my previous employer, that I kid you not, before I left there, one of the employees, to remain unnamed, actually said to me, because I had printed out a parking pass an hour before I was supposed to be exiting this job.
You're not a part of this company.
Basically, no. He basically said, oh, you won't need that parking pass anymore. And I said, why not? I've already got my tickets. He was, oh, that would be embarrassing for you. I said, embarrassing for who? For you or for me? I said, who are you to tell me who is going to be embarrassed? I said, I've got extra tickets. I have an 8 and a 7-year-old that are super excited. It's going to be their first Orlando City game. I've got friends coming to this game. I was like, I'd rather not face them and look them in the eye and tell them why we can't go to the game than to be embarrassed in front of you guys. And he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I said, you should be. Maybe next time you should think before you talk. Put your foot in your mouth a little bit. But anyway, it's neither here nor there.
Right.
But yeah, so I would say when I sat in my car that day, I definitely prayed. I talked to God, and basically said, I don't know why you're doing this, but I know you have a reason behind it, and I'm here for it. And had I not been, again, so strong in my faith at that point, and I give a lot of credit and a lot of reflection, a lot of prayer time with my wife, and we have a young married couples group that we meet every Thursday on Zoom. It's fantastic.
Oh wow! Had
I not had that support system,
right,
I could have seen the old me sitting in there in the car and just absolutely crumbling and being like, this is the end. This is how, everything ends here.
So essentially what you're saying is you built a very strong foundation with faith. You built a very strong foundation with your supplemental income. You built a foundation with the group that you're in every Thursday that you're meeting up. It sounds like you had a lot of support in different channels that really fueled the fire. And not only that, like you just said, that one guy saying, hey, this parking pass isn't for you. I feel like that's also fuel, right? And that was also a testament to why you should be going the route that you were going. And it was kind of like you needed to prove a point, Like not only was this your goal and this is where God's leading you, but there's a point to be proven here. And that's what you were able to do, Now, going into your pivot into real estate, what was the very first moment from your W-2 working in PT? Because it sounds like you're a really busy guy. Were you kind of like looking at YouTube videos on the side, or was it a Facebook group? What was your first key moment? You were like, okay, real estate is where I want to pivot into. Because come on, let's be real. There's so many industries that give opportunity. Why was it real estate one of them?
Well, I'll say how a couple of things tied back in. My wife and I had always been interested in real estate. Her mom was a realtor. My best friend and brother-in-law was a realtor.
Okay, here we go.
One of our best friends is a title agent, she owns her own title company here in town.
Okay.
So it wasn't like it was totally foreign because we were around that kind of talk. We had friends, another couple good friends here in town that are real estate agents. But we always both knew that we didn't really want to go be a real estate agent. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not what we thought we wanted.
Gotcha.
My wife grew up obviously seeing her mom being gone sometimes to go show a house and things on nights and weekends. She's like, that's just not the life I wanted. So it wasn't that it was totally foreign, but more so that we love to travel. We absolutely love to travel. So anytime we're driving in a car trip or flying somewhere, it's like we just hop on Zillow and start looking around, see what the listings are. And it was almost became a fun game of like, oh, this house is by the water. It's about this size. If this was in Orlando, I know the market. This is about what it would cost. And when we got to other parts of the country, when either they were drastically inflated, even compared to here, like San Diego, Los Angeles, those kinds of areas, but we would get out into the country, which is where I feel most at home, most at peace. The cost of real estate was far less than what it was here. And I'm like, man, okay, maybe this is something I could, learn and do. And ultimately, it was just going to be a passive investment. We wanted an Airbnb somewhere up in the mountains that we could travel to, and that essentially took care of itself in terms of we could rent it out and pay for itself. I don't care if it makes me money every day because I had a W-2. Well, then when that kind of shift happened, that was when it was like, all right, now out of necessity, I need to find a way for this to become profitable, not just a hobby. So I mentioned transactional lending before that. I enjoyed that. Didn't love it, but I enjoyed it. And it was
that through any of the mentorships, or was that?
Yeah, so I found that actually from YouTube. I was watching a lot of free content from Pace Morby and Sub2, and I really enjoyed learning creative finance because, like I mentioned before, I love to be creative. I love to find solutions to problems rather than just, okay, here's my money, take it. If there's a way that it makes it work for everybody, I've almost deemed myself a deal engineer. I love to figure out a way to make it work better for everyone. But I was watching one of Pace's videos. It was actually a former kind of YouTube, and he was interviewing a guy named Ryan Schroep. Ryan I found out was actually up in Jacksonville, and he was doing transactional funding, and I listened to the whole podcast, and I really liked the way Ryan looked at it. He was a software engineer and kind of engineered some of these things and basically knew what his goal was, and he worked backwards from there. Young, driven guy that had stepped away from his W-2, so I found obviously some similarities there, and I could really
relate. Right.
And then I felt like, okay, if I could go meet this guy and go find a real estate meetup, that kind of thing. So I found him on a school community and found he had a free school community, and he was just about to start a paid community. So that's where the rubber kind of hit the road for me, and I was like, if you're ever going to, and this was before I lost my W-2, and I said, if I'm ever going to take a risk and actually put some money up for education, why not this? And it was a relatively low cost. I think it was like $120 a month. It wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't anything that was going to break the bank. And I just started to learn. I started to get in there. I started to talk to people. I started to, make friendships, make relationships. And that's actually ultimately, I don't know if you knew this, but that's actually what led me to meeting you. It was that community.
Oh, wow.
So one of the biggest things Ryan used to say, because he was in Sub2, or is in Sub2.
Yeah, I don't see him. I know who you're talking about. I don't see him as much. I think he's
correct. I think he's kind of stepped aside. He's got a good following. He's doing amazing. I've since stepped away from that, and I still keep in contact. I actually texted him at Squad Up this year and kind of thanked him for kind of getting me over that hump. I don't think he knew that, but he kind of got me over that hump to kind of start to take action and start to believe in myself and invest in myself a little bit.
Yep.
But one of the guys in the group, Ryan would always talk about going in-person meetups, starting to meet people in person. And I'm not a shy person. I can talk to anybody. I can make a friend with anybody. And for some reason, that was so scary to me of stepping into a realm and thinking that imposter syndrome or that scarcity mindset of going somewhere and then being like, you don't belong here. Like, what are you doing here? But one of the guys actually posted a photo, and it was the next day. It was your meetup. It was at what was the name of the brewery used to have that?
Rock Pit Brewing.
Rock Pit, which I knew Rock Pit well, so it kind of felt a sense of comfort there. And I remember coming up and walking up and seeing the whole group outside, and I saw you had a videographer there. I'm like, oh shit, what am I getting myself into? Like this. And I actually remember walking straight through, like kind of acting like I didn't know. And I went straight to the bar and got like 2 beers and got a little liquid courage before I came back outside. And dude, that one meetup, I can honestly say, was probably one of the biggest impacts and game changers for me, because I met so many amazing people there. I did get a chance to kind of talk with you a little bit there. I actually talked with you about a property that I was looking at in North Carolina.
I remember.
And I remember the whole conversation very vividly, not necessarily at first because of a good reason. I think I told you this before, but your videographer sitting there filming us, and I was like, man, this guy's just doing this just to make content, just so people see him, see what he's doing. And I was a little skeptical, and I came back for another meetup, and you came up to me and you said, hey, Trevor, how's that property going in Bryson City? Did you ever, and I was like, I was so shocked. I was like, man, this guy remembered of all these people here. I told you I was new. I told you I was just getting into this. And something about my perspective changed right then and there. And I was like, all right, this guy means really well. And I've, continued to obviously engage with you, interact with you, and consider you a friend and a mentor almost at this point. But yeah, that's I can say that's probably when things started clicking. That was, again, before I ever lost my W-2.
Wow.
So my goal was to slowly move into this and never really move out of it, because I had great benefits, I had great pay, was getting good 401k, and I was going to start to invest that in real estate, and
Right.
hopefully a couple years have 4 or 5 rental properties and still be working my W-2. And I felt like I was going to be the best of both worlds.
Right.
But time started to become a factor, of course. It's like any W-2. I could get my daily job done in a matter of a few hours.
Correct.
So that left a lot of time at lunch. I wasn't a type to go sit and take a walk for an hour. I'd be watching YouTubes or podcasts or whatever,
Right.
listening to Pace, learning as much as I possibly could so that I could go and make good financial decisions with my investment money. And like I said, I don't think that had I been thrust into that with being fired, I don't know that I still wouldn't be doing that same thing, just kind of dabbling a little.
Another company, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Going to Orlando Health or something.
Yeah.
I say it time after time, and people don't realize, if you want to do anything in life, it doesn't have to be real estate, but if you want to do anything at a high level, you need to get around the people who are doing it at a high level.
Yeah.
When you become a product of the environment, you really excel your learning curve exponentially.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that. I get a lot of people, they hit me up for advice. I said, bro, why aren't you in this room? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And people make it so difficult.
They do.
But it's just like you. It's the limited beliefs. It's the
Yeah.
imposter syndrome. It's the constant battle that we have with our minds up here.
Oh, yeah.
Our minds are wired to keep us protected. You get close to an edge of a cliff. It's geared to let you know that is dangerous. And that works in the same thing when you think about something that you want to do something. You were able to take that and say, my mind's telling me, if I leave my W-2, this is a dangerous move.
Yep.
But you led on faith. You led on your wife. You led with the group that you joined every single week. You created a big platform that you can branch off of and catapult into lending and being in the right rooms and then joining mentorships. And a lot of people think, and I know a lot online, there's a lot of gurus trying to sell fake ass courses.
Yep.
And everyone's trying to sell you something these days. And it sucks because that's the way social media has become.
Yep.
And, believe it or not, everything that I put out there is for people to get education off of, because, I get paid in other ways. It all comes around, right? What goes around comes around. And that's one thing I like to provide with my social media platforms. I love to give,
Yep.
and you have to give to receive.
Of course.
And people don't realize that. But I love how you really tuned in from going in from your being a physical therapist, building that foundation, because you didn't start off quicksand. You built a solid foundation that gave you courage to lead yourself into being a real estate investor, which was first into lending with Ryan Schroep,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And then I didn't even know the story about you finding my meetup through him and his community.
Mm-hmm.
And now that you tell me that you came to my meetup and then that fired you up, bro, that means a lot to me, bro. Because everyone gets so confused and they think like, oh, I need to have this big following to make it or have an impact in someone. That's the beautiful thing about this is there are so many people that watch my videos, thousands and thousands every single month, right? And I don't even have that big of a following. But the amount of impact that it puts out there is it's crazy. And I get DMs, I get texts, I get people hugging me at meetups saying, hey, you've changed my life.
Yep.
And that to me is emotional currency. And that's how I get paid.
Yeah.
And you sitting here telling me that you have gone to a meetup that help you break through something. And actually, believe it or not, that's why I actually made, I don't know if you know Ella Ray, the TC.
Yeah.
I made her one of the leaders in the Sub2 group.
Yep.
The meetup that I did was because she's an introvert and she doesn't like to get out there. And I made her speak at that very first meetup that we had. We actually had, I think, about 56 people show up at our very first meetup. I saw sweat coming down her face when I told her to speak in front of that many people, right?
Yeah.
I told her, say, after I speak, I want you to speak. Tell people who you are. Build your brand. Tell people, because this is when she was just starting out in TC. And now she's doing 30 to 60 deals a month.
I know. It's crazy.
She's freaking blowing up, and I even try to get her out there more and try to be more systematic. But see, that's the thing. A lot of people don't realize it's you helping me helping you. me scratching your back, I'm scratching your back. Like it's just us helping each other.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about Sub 2 and the communities that we're in is we
Absolutely.
all have really congregated together and everyone's, willing to be so helpful. So bring us to the moment to where you got into, getting into courses, right? Because you said, hey,
Yeah.
I bought my first course. It taught me about how to, transactional fund. People, I want you guys to realize Trevor had a lot of courage here. Not only did he have courage going from his W-2, leaving that with, he's got a wife and kids at home, to pivoting from that, taking his 401k money. Sounds like that was the money that you had first to invest into some deals, right? Did you liquidate all your 401k entirely?
No, we never used that for transactional funding. I used either my own capital, or when going through Ryan, a lot of times you're able to use his. That was obviously the part of being in his group. But the first
was
deal,
he raising capital to give to you guys? Okay.
Yep.
And
So
he was probably taking a delta.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Correct. So he would raise capital. At least to my understanding, he would raise capital. So he was using other people's money. He was leveraging that, and then he was leveraging deals that we would bring to him. And he took that delta, which it was still very fair. But that very first deal, actually, I remember bringing to him, and I remember him texting me back and being like, "Bro, it's not supposed to happen this fast. Like, you're supposed to have to like go through some struggles." And I got that first glimpse of like, wow, this is real. I was so excited that day. I actually skipped a couple steps, I found out. And I went ahead and went to the bank and wired it on my lunch account out of my own personal savings. And I was like, I believe in this so much that I've done the due diligence. I think it was like $2,000. It wasn't anything life-changing crazy.
Okay.
Again, it's money, obviously. It's a mortgage payment. But yeah, I remember doing that and then doing a handful of deals with him after that, and kind of not getting stale, but kind of the outreach I was doing. I wasn't really fully buying into the social media yet and putting my face out there. I had built a following off of photography and off of just being a family man. That was it. And I've since kind of come full circle with that, and yeah, started to realize that social media is definitely the way to get your name out there, build your brand, and also let people see you. Because yeah, this is one way, getting out there and going to a local meetup. But Pace talks about it all the time, is creating clones of yourself, right? Because people are going to hear this and our words, and how hopefully this can help somebody else who's got a scarcity mindset or a scared mindset of leaving that W-2 for something greater, that maybe they'll hear this 2 years down the road and boom, it helps them.
That's the beauty about this. Like, we're creating a video right now that's actually going to be working on our behalf for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Yep.
What we're recording today, people don't realize, is going to be watched today and years from now.
Yep.
And that's the beauty about where people sleep on social media. Like, why wouldn't you want to be on all the platforms and be at them on a high level? But people think it takes a lot of work. It takes this whole, cameraman and all the special equipment. And the reality is you can get started with your iPhone.
Yeah.
Right. An iPhone and some mics that cost $150 on Amazon. And that's how I got started, which was a cell phone. That's how Marlon got started as well. This is how people get started, is with just the basic stuff. You have to take the imperfect action.
Get started.
Right. You have to get started. So going from the $2,000 lend and lending in your first transactional deal, right? How soon did that money come back in a return? What type of return did you get on that? So people understand. So that came out of your savings account. Okay. You lended that for a transactional deal. Okay. Talk to people. What is a transactional deal?
So transactional funding is funding somebody's EMD, or earnest money deposit, which is, again...
So I'm a real estate investor. I have a real estate contract. I'm maybe wholesaling the deal, and I don't have money for the escrow money.
Yep.
Okay. Hey, Trevor, can I get $2,000?
Absolutely. So we would go into a JV contract, which would basically say, hey, me, Trevor, is helping you, Javier, by funding your earnest money deposit.
Okay.
It shows how much I'm funding. It also shows my return. And my return is due by a certain date. A lot of times with EMD, especially as an EMD lender, I want to make sure that my money is protected. Protected by meaning I'm only wiring it to escrow, and I'm also making sure that I'm wiring with enough inspection period for you, the wholesaler, to go and find an end buyer.
Right.
However, if that money goes hard after that inspection period's over, that's me putting my money at risk.
Right.
So a lot of times that's when we would say, hey, inspection period ends in 10 days. I'm fine with lending this money for you. It's protected in escrow. I've done all of the legality. I've touched base. I know this title company is legitimate. I know that they understand the words of my contract, meaning if I, for any reason, want to pull my EMD back out within that inspection period, I can get it back. I've done all the due diligence I need to do. Boom, I'm going to wire that money to them.
Okay.
Your contract is now legal and valid. you now can go market and obviously have a executed contract. So then if you go find a buyer within that 10-day inspection period, boom, that buyer then comes in and replaces my EMD, usually with a higher EMD amount to get me out and also
Right.
get my return out.
Right.
And now you as the wholesaler can sell that deal to them and make the profit in between. When I first heard that, I didn't think it was real. I was like, who wouldn't have $2,000? I even
Right.
I pitched this to a handful of other real estate investors, and my friend is a title agent. She's like, I've never heard of anybody needing, $2,000, $5,000 for EMD. But when you get into it and you realize some of the people that are doing this at scale
Correct.
have payrolls they have to do. They have expenses. They have
Not
a lot
only
of
that.
money coming in, but they have a lot of money going
Going
out too.
Correct.
So it's like,
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing,
it's the cost of doing business.
10, 15, 20 contracts a month and your average EMD is $200-$300 or maybe $1,000, because, EMD can be any amount of
Yeah.
consideration, right? It could be, honestly, it could be a car. It could be $10, $1, $0. I actually have a contract right now. I have $0 on EMD.
Yep.
But you were able to fund somebody else's EMD, which is essentially a wholesaler, meaning that they're going to take that contract and sell their equitable interest to an end buyer,
Yep.
which would potentially close on that property. So that deal, did it close within that 10 days?
Yep.
And what was your return? So he lent out $2,000 out of his savings account, which some people have, some people don't, which there's other ways you can get that $2,000. So you lent that $2,000 out of that $2,000. So you got your $2,000 back plus what?
Plus 40%. So I got $800 back.
Wow.
Yep.
In 10 days.
Yep.
Okay. So why did you not continue to go on that path is the question.
Yeah, that's a good, and I did for a while. I honestly did. That's one form of transactional funding. I also got really into double closes.
Double closes, love it.
So funded a handful of those. Thanks
What's
to
a double
Ryan.
close?
Double close is essentially same scenario.
Okay.
You, Javier, need money from me. You have a contract with, Mr. Seller. Mr. Seller has a contract with you. You're the wholesaler. You now go market that property to an end buyer. You make a whole nother contract with the end buyer. You bring both of those contracts together. You take them to title and basically say, hey, I'm buying this house for $100,000 from Mr. Seller. I'm selling it to Mr. Buyer at $110,000. You make the difference.
Gotcha.
The problem is a lot of those title companies need you as the wholesaler to fund that $100,000 before they will release the money.
And is that because of local laws?
Yes and no. So
Why would somebody want to use a double close?
well,
What are some of the main things why people want to use a double close?
well, in states where wholesaling is illegal or you need a real estate license to do it,
Okay.
that's actually kind of a way that they kind of get around that
Loophole, okay.
Yeah, meaning you cannot assign a contract. And a lot of times, I ran into this a lot of people being like, "Are you a wholesaler?" Because this is not an assignable contract, which means I cannot get a contract from the seller and then go and assign it to somebody else, which is what most wholesalers do. The way to get around that is you do have to pay a little bit more in closing costs because you're technically doing two simultaneous closes. So some title companies charge you a little bit more, but they also want you to fund that first $100,000 in that previous example. Well, a lot of people don't have $100,000 liquid. So that's where, as a transactional funder, we would come in and we'd say, hey, I can fund your $100,000. And most of those are in and out within the same day.
That's beautiful.
So you fund it, you get your $100,000 back plus your return, which was usually anywhere from 1 to 2.5%.
Wow.
So
Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
Quick money.
it's quick money.
Okay, so all right, so you continued on the trail of doing transactional funding.
Yeah.
Whether it was a double close or whether it was just a what was the other
EMD.
EMD.
Yep.
Sorry. Yeah,
Yep.
EMD.
So I did a handful of both of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you either did EMD or you did a double close, right? And so you continued on that path.
Yep.
What was the moment to where you're like, I don't want to do this? Because essentially that's really good money.
It is.
You know, and it sounds like you joined a mentorship that kind of gave you the blueprint of how to do that successfully.
Yeah.
Right. How much was that mentorship that you joined?
I think it was like $120 a month.
$120 a month?
Yeah.
Okay, so $120 a month. So he spent $120 a month. You people who's complaining about not being able to excel in life, stop drinking your Starbucks coffee and get your damn course that you want to buy from somebody who's reputable, not one of these gurus out there just trying to sell you shit that's not really trying to help, right? Do your due diligence, do your homework, because there are a lot of fraudulent people out there who just want to sell you a course and don't really have anything good intentional behind what they're really selling in that product, right? So you get the blueprint, you go down this path of doing transactional lending and EMD lending. What was the moment where you're like, hey, I don't want to create a business out of this and I want to get into something else in real estate? Like,
Yeah, and I think this goes into deeper dive of like how I feel like my brain works, and I'm always kind of doing a lot of introspection, and I did that at a younger age in a leadership position in PT because I had a mentor one time, a manager, look at me and say, "You want more, but you're not willing to change anything about yourself. You want to blame everything on everybody else,
right? You're a
and you
victim.
want them to solve it for you or to change for you.
Right.
You can't change other people. You can change yourself.
Right.
And a lot of times when you go change yourself and you look inward, you either then change your environment or you change your perspective or your mindset. And for me, it was all of those three things. So when I would go in and looked at these deals, I enjoyed these deals, but then I would also see these wholesalers who were making 10, 15, 20K on these deals. I'm like, I want to make more. And I also don't necessarily only want to lend forever. I wanted to own some assets, which obviously wholesaling is not exactly that. You're flipping paper.
Right.
So, but I saw more money there too. I
Yeah.
saw more opportunity. And I also, to me, the community we were in was great, but it was all virtual. I'm a people person. I want to go and meet people in
Right.
person. So
You
again,
wanted the energy.
when I first went and I felt the energy of that first meetup with you and all the people around, I was like, I want to meet local people. I want to do other bigger things. And that's kind of what opened the door for me. It was like, okay, I spent a little bit of money and it paid dividends 2-3x pretty quickly.
Love that.
So then it was
Wow.
like, okay, what other rooms can I start to get into? So that was the proof in the pudding for me was,
Right.
wow, it wasn't all just, it wasn't all just talk. It wasn't all just, oh, just go spend the money. And, cause I was brought up very frugally and it was, save. There was not real investing talk.
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot. I wasn't educated on that. We don't get educated on that in school. And to no fault of anybody who, my parents or anything like that, they're amazing. They brought me up the way I was. They made me the man that I am today, but I never got a lot of that. And my mind works as far as like, I don't understand that, but that excites me and it makes me want to go dive into it deeper and find out more. So the more I found out about real estate, the more I wanted to learn, the more I wanted to meet people, the more I wanted to dive into other people's experiences and expertise and learn from doing. You keep talking about that imperfect action, and I appreciate that. But that's truthfully the only way to learn. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. My wife will vouch for that. But I usually don't ever make that same mistake twice. I learn from that, I adapt to that, and I get stronger because of that, whereas other people may just keep doing the same thing over and over. To me, that's the definition of insanity, doing
Yeah.
the same thing over and over.
Expect a different result.
You got it.
Yeah, and so the one thing that I want to touch on just a second ago that you mentioned is like, you had a great, childhood. You were brought up very conservatively, and I know that the people that are probably watching this, there's a good portion of people who have brought up very conservative, and their parents have brainwashed them to thinking that they have to have this life of going to college and, make sure you have a perfect credit score and make sure you live your life like this and get married at this age and make sure you buy a home at this age, and just this laid out blueprint of what life should look like for them. And I get it. Every parent wants to make sure that their child is successful, right? And you're a father, you're a parent, right? You want to make sure that your children aren't just on the streets, or they're not just, doing just bare minimum stuff. You obviously want them to excel. And was it the mentorship that actually got you to speak that different language? Because that's also another time you've pivoted, was the mindset, right? Like, obviously you had your initial pivot from W-2 mindset into going into working for yourself and really cultivating that entrepreneur spirit. But now you're like, okay, well, the people that I'm closest to, the people I've loved, the people who've brought me up in my life aren't speaking the same language to me. And where was it the mentorships that get you to speak this different language? Because obviously you having the few successful transaction lending that you did in the beginning gave you the courage and gave you like, wow, this actually does work. I actually invested $120 to figure out a blueprint that was already created for me, that I can deploy my $2,000 that wasn't doing a damn thing in my bank account and get a 40% return on my money within 10 days. That's insane.
Yeah.
And then you did it again. And then you did it again. And then you did it again. So was it that the Ryan mentorship that gave you the language and the courage? Or is it just like, I see that this is working, and you know what? I'm now going to be speaking a different language here on out. I'm in it. Because now you've done it. You've done a few deals, right? You're like, okay. Because I know what it feels like. It's like, it's that boost of confidence.
It is.
And it's like, shit, if this can happen, imagine what else can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if it was any one thing. I think it was always there. And I mentioned faith before again too. I'm a firm believer that God can open the door for you, but He can't help you to walk through it. You've still got to take
that.
the action and do it. He closes one door, He opens another. Well, what happens if you decide to stand there and not walk through that door? And for me, I feel like that's exactly what happened. I had some proof. I was okay with making these small bits and chunks of money and watching that grow, and I could see again how that grew over time. But then when that one door slammed pretty abruptly, and all of a sudden I was like, "All right, God, what are you going to open for me next?" And all of a sudden it was like, "Well, the doors have been open. You just haven't walked through them yet." So that mindset from before, again, that mentor I mentioned, even at my W-2, it was like, you can't change others, you should still change yourself. I'm a firm believer in that.
Do you keep in touch with him?
Her.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
I do.
You do?
Still on social media. We'll text every now and again. I probably haven't talked to her, I think, since I got fired from that last job. I might have seen her just before that.
Is she still in that same industry?
She is.
She's in the medical field?
Yep.
Okay.
She's a physical therapist as well. She's fantastic. I had a handful of female mentors that were fantastic too, in particular, both at Advent Health, both still there, that actually encouraged me the same, because one of them stepped down from a full-time role to a part-time role to be more present at home. And I told her, when she told me, she was actually in tears when she told me, and I said, thank you for, knowing what you want and following that, and not just falling into the trap of give more to work and not having enough left for home. And that to me also was a big changing moment, because that was around the time when I was playing with the idea of stepping away from my current role, and I was actively looking for other opportunities when that Health Foundation job came to me. But had I not been, had some of those female mentors, I don't know if I'd have been ready for that.
Have you gone back, and now that you know that she's got maybe a little bit more time freedom because she stepped down from that role at Avid Health, do you ever go back and say, hey, look, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm up to? By the way, kudos to you is why I'm doing this, which obviously you just made, that comment of letting her know that and giving her credibility for that. But do you ever go back and say, hey, just out of curiosity, would you ever be interested in doing something like this? Because it's like kind of like a stay-at-home mom. Like she could do transactional funding. I'm sure she's got, a couple $1,000s sitting in her bank account that she can utilize toward, transactional funding. Has that ever come across your thing? And now you've become a mentor to them? Like,
No, honestly, that's a good question. And no, that one in particular, I haven't. The previous one I mentioned, I told her that she changed the whole trajectory of my career in my W-2, because I was treating patients. I was never a manager. I was never a leader. I was always, again, I had the victim mentality of, I'm just going to work harder in my current role and I deserve to get paid more. And she was the one that called me in her office. She was my manager at that time. Then she was my director after I became a manager, of being like, hey, you want all these things, but you're not doing anything to change yourself. You're just expecting it to come to you. And I did tell her, actually, on a pretty big stage in front of all the other PTs and rehab professionals, I gave her kudos there. And she told me multiple times how appreciative she was. And she's still a very good, close friend. My wife's taken photos of her and her family.
Wow.
We've been out with them. But the other mentor, I would say, no, I haven't. And that is now on my slate to kind of go back and touch base with them, because I have touched base with a handful of people. Actually, one of them has been to your meetup as well. So I was in PT last year, actually when I was just stepping into real estate, and I told him a little bit about what I was doing in terms of transactional lending, and told him about a local meetup. And he's like, oh, I'd come to that. It was coincidentally, I was at PT the same day your meetup was. His name's Tony, and he came to your meetup. He was like, man, this is awesome. You got to keep letting me know. I don't know that he's come to many more, and I don't see him as much because I'm not in PT there as much. But I have touched base with a handful of other people now that I've started to put out what I'm doing more on social media, and be like, hey, what are you doing? I've got spare money to lend. Can I get in on a deal? How do I do this? That's the majority of my private money lenders on some of my deals now have been my parents and my friends who see what we're doing and are like, I've got money to lend. How do I make money with this?
Right. Love it. So what would you suggest to someone who's looking to, I know what people are thinking. They're probably like, oh, well, I see all these people trying to sell me a course online. Yeah. You obviously spent $120. You actually won on your very first shot, right? Did you buy anything prior to that? That was a winner right off the gate?
No, I got into a pretty big loser before that, though.
I
can let you know about that, too.
So let's talk about that for a second, because I know, what would you advise for people to look for when trying to figure out who is the real deal that's selling a really good product, and who is going to give you a good blueprint to whatever you're doing. It could be, I don't know, you want to be a physician, or you want to be a masseuse, or whatever.
Airbnb arbitrage specialist.
Airbnb arbitrage specialist.
Yeah.
You got all these gurus online trying to. But so, what would you tell somebody like you? Okay, so prior to this, so I like that. So here's another layer we're peeling back. Like prior to that, you bought something that didn't yield you results.
Mm-hmm.
But the second time that you swung the bat, you bought something that yielded you results. What do you recommend that someone does to mitigate risk of them buying a $5, $10, $20, a couple $100 course and losing all their money?
You know, as you were asking me this question, I was honestly kind of panicking a little bit because I didn't know what I was going to say. But I look back to, I'd say, a mentor now. You and I both are in sub 2 in pace. And he always talks about putting out, you know, just providing value. And I think that's just one of those buzzwords. But you do it all the time by doing these and providing free content, not asking anybody to pay for anything. You provide so much value before you ever ask for $1 from them that the decision's already made. So for me, I got a handful of these calls of people trying to get you to do drop shipping and all these different things.
There's so much out there today.
But every single call was a sales call. It was quick, to the point. You could tell they had another one in 15 minutes that they had to get you off the phone, and it was either a yes or a no. And they were okay with that because it's a numbers game.
Right.
That's not how I play the game.
Roll call. Huh?
It's a relationship game for me. And being a PT for 11, 12 years now, it was all about the relationship. I mentioned that earlier. It's how you can make them feel and what level you can connect with them. Not necessarily just to sell them something, because I wasn't selling them anything other than buying into the exercises that I was teaching them. I wasn't trying to buy them in financially, although they were paying from their healthcare, whether they knew it or not, what they were paying. They still, if they didn't buy into what I was teaching and I didn't put my whole heart into that, they may or may not get any better. So why not make a relationship with that person, see what drives them, see what motivates them to want to get better, and then leverage that. You told me, oh, Joe's got to walk his daughter down the aisle in 6 months. He can barely walk right now because he just broke his leg or he's had a knee replacement. I know Joe's going to be super driven when he comes into PT. And I also know if I make references to that in a time that he maybe needs it the most or he's struggling, boom, that's that extra energy that lifts him up. So when you, I'm going to get back to your other question. I know I get off track, but
it's okay.
How did I know that? And again, Ryan's I knew was real because he had a free school community that I came into, and I learned a ton, probably almost as much as the paid community, which most people don't realize. It's like, oh, they're hiding the secrets behind this crazy veil.
Yeah.
A lot of times that's just the barrier to entry to get you to
be around the action takers.
Exactly. And that was the light that went off around to me. It was like, I put in that little bit of money, and now I'm in a smaller group of people that are actually taking action, that aren't just asking the same question over and over that they could reference back in the chat that's already been asked. Now all of a sudden it was like, wow, I'm around, I think it was like 50 people when we first started, and we were on these like family Zooms almost. And it was like, oh, wow, I can ask any question I want and not feel stupid because we're all in the same boat together. That was the biggest thing, I think, for me, that I saw the difference of a sales pitch and a numbers game of just getting you to sign up, which I mentioned before. We signed up for an Airbnb arbitrage that was absolutely a disaster. And then soon after, I still hadn't gotten my refund for that. That was $10K. I hadn't even gotten my refund for that when I jumped into Ryan's, because I just felt a totally different energy. I know you and I have talked energy before. I'm a very big feels energy kind of person. How do you make me feel? If you rub me the wrong way, okay, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe we just don't jive on a certain subject, whether it's, politics, social media, whatever. I usually don't get into all that. But there's got to be something that's either drawing me to you or pushing me away from you. If I'm pushed away from you, I'm usually not going to give you my money. If I'm drawn towards you, of course, then I want to figure out, how we can do business together. So that was the biggest thing for me.
So the biggest thing was from you, if I understand correctly, is you joined his free group. You saw all the value that he was given, and it was the energy that he was exposing to all the members that really drawed you into saying like, hey, this is real.
Yeah. And I also saw, if he's providing this much value to a free group, imagine what it's going to be for a paid group.
Gotcha. So in terms of value, was he doing like live webinars? Was he doing actually like, hey, here's PDF files and here's some like was he literally in the trenches with you guys every day?
Every day.
In the free course,
Oh, yeah.
in the free community, and
In
then
the free community before the paid one, he was. Then he focused obviously a lot more as the paid community, and there were other leaders he encouraged us to step back down and provide value in the free community, because then those people would come along to the paid community and obviously provide more value. So it was just like this symbiotic relationship. But initially, yeah, I mean, he's still in the trenches, teaching, educating, going through master classes, walking you from A to Z through an EMD and through a double close, all of those things. I mean, yeah, and he would answer questions. He and his wife both did this. He stepped aside from his W-2 and was doing this full time.
Yeah, because he was an engineer, you said.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. And so, okay, so that's how you find a really good person who's actually doing the right thing and has the right morals toward their product, right? They're a believer in the product, right, that they're selling, and they're obviously educating those individuals. What would you say? What are things to look for in the people who are out there just trying to steal people's money and just sell them a $5,000-$10,000 high ticket course and just run the other way?
Again, it's almost like there's so many scams and sales pitches and gimmicks out there anymore that
it's sad, man. It's like that's
it
all
really,
social media is.
It really is. Or all these cold calls. Like I call people all the time now talking about real estate, talking about selling houses or calling realtors and even realtors who are marketing a house. You answer a phone call and from the get-go, because there's so many scams out there, they're skeptical of year one. It's like, well, what do you want to know? It's like, well, I'm genuinely interested in the house. So I would say, if it feels off, trust your gut, or at least be cautious before just signing over your money. Do your due diligence. Ask for some references. Ask for some people that have, gone and done and seen. And not necessarily just the people that are like, here, you can talk to Joe and Susie. They're our star students. Here you go. Maybe say, can I have access to the community for a couple of days? Which is actually what I did in this Airbnb arbitrage.
That's good value.
We had 72 hours before we could get a refund and we could make that decision. Well, wasn't altogether true, and we had to take legal action, and a year later it finally got cleared up. But it felt like a gimmick, and I did not trust my gut. Even on that sales call,
something felt wrong.
Because he was like, oh, okay, great, Trevor, you're in. Let me pass you off to this guy, and he'll get you started. And I'm like, okay, I thought I was going to be dealing with you. Oh, no, this is, and I get it. Bigger operations have teams and things like that too, so you're not always going to you don't always talk to the CEO of a healthcare foundation.
Of course, right.
So, but it just, I didn't trust my gut. My gut, and I felt off from the very beginning. Whereas this, it was conversational. It was an interaction, a relationship being built, not just a transaction being done.
Yeah, it was very fluid.
Yeah,
you felt like.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's fast forward here a little bit. So, what got you going from transactional funding, doing EMD funding to double closes? Why didn't you? This is the entrepreneur in me, because I have a few companies that I own today, right? Why didn't you just scale out and build a team behind that? Because it was you essentially had it sounded like you had formulated some type of conveyor belt at some point where you were just doing all the work, but you understood the whole entire process. Why didn't you just leverage out those tasks and delegate those tasks to people who can do it even better than you, and you still take that spread of profit? What stopped you from doing that?
That's a good question, and I'll say probably a couple things. I think part of it is and I recognize this too. That's one of my weaknesses, that when I start to get good at something, I also start to get bored, and then I want to go learn something else.
Gotcha.
So
I have that same thing.
So part of that is my weakness, but that is something that I am working on actively with the team right now in Owners Club. Realizing that we all like to go 14 different directions. That visionary mindset of mine is like, oh, that would be a really cool project. This would be a really cool project. Well, because I send you half of these deals.
Yeah. I can see how your mind's moving.
Yeah. But I am actively, again, looking inside to see, okay, how do I not necessarily fix that, but how do I harness that? How do I make some of these? Because I have great ideas. And a lot of these could be very profitable and are going to be. I just need the right other people around me in a team to help harness that energy, to make it that conveyor belt that turns into a steamroller that just keeps gathering steam and keeps making money. For this, I got not to say I got a little bored, but I was also actively brand new to real estate. So I was like, all right, I want to learn some other things too. And to me also at
Shiny
that point,
object syndrome?
some shiny object, but I also, the way I thought too was like, okay, as the engineer mindset is I'm looking for people that want to borrow money, which most of them were wholesalers. Some of them were end buyers, some of them were fix and flippers, but most of them were wholesalers. So to me, I'm like, well, in order to speak the best language and sound the most educated, I need to learn how to wholesale. I need to learn what it is, what their process is, other than just here's some money, take it, this is my return, and not really understanding. Because to me then, they would trust me more if I spoke their language and if I understood their craft.
Right.
So I started looking into that a little more. I never really did much wholesaling, but out of one of my interactions, actually on Facebook, I reached out to somebody that I thought needed money. They didn't need money, but they needed to sell their mother-in-law's house. And I was like, I've been learning this wholesale thing. Maybe if I can negotiate this deal. They needed a quick sale. They needed cash. They were going through a rough situation with divorce, and they just wanted to be done with this home and move on. All the signs that I had always heard and listened to, right, of this is a good lead, right? Okay. So I talked to them on and off for about 2 months. And again, I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing. I was kind of afraid to make that lower offer that it honestly it deserved. But I explained to them why it wasn't worth what they wanted, which I believe at that time was like $350,000. I said all of these things to the renovations to get it up to that. Anyway, I negotiated that deal down. I actually got it under contract, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to wholesale this deal. Like, I don't know what to do with this. Now I got to go find a buyer. Well, I was in the free sub 2 community, and I had met a handful of people at a couple of, actually, I don't know if it was your meetup or the one I went to in Jacksonville, but I also met another sub 2 member named Mandy up in Jacksonville, and I took it to her. Fantastic. I do a handful of lending deals with her now actively. It's fantastic. And I reached out to her and I said, Mandy, I don't know what to do. I got this house under contract. It's up near you. It's in Palm Coast, so it's kind of close to Jacksonville. This is your area, right? You're going to buy this from me, right? And she's like, yeah, it's a great deal, but I'm not going to buy it from you, but I will pass you on to this great guy I know that only does fix and flip in Palm Coast. Fast forward, talk to this guy. His name's Robert. He is amazing, 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 amazing. Another big reason as to why my mindset with real estate changed, and we are now partners. So, I talked to him and I said, got this property. This is what I locked it up as. And he's like, you got it for how much? And I was like, I got it under contract for $225. Would that be something you'd buy? He's like,
You're kind of scared, like,
yeah.
Dude, did I not do the right thing?
I was worried that I was going to have to go back to the seller and backtrack and be like, I'm sorry, I can't help you buy your house. And I'm going to say I'm lucky. I'm very fortunate, but I had also done the work to put me in this position because not many people find a buyer for their deal on the first or second person they talk to. Right. They build a buyer's list, and I was very novice to that.
But to give credit, you've built it because you were part of a community.
True.
And
Very
you reached out to other people in the community who pointed you in the right direction. So essentially, you bought the express pass to that buyer versus waiting in line for hours and hours and hours.
Yep.
If you think about it.
Yeah, you're right. So I got on the phone with him that night, coincidentally enough, while I was actually out photographing a rocket launch, which is another one of my passions, as you know. But that was when he wanted to touch base. So I talked to him while I was actively shooting. And I remember having a conversation on my headphones and being like, hey, this is the deal I got under contract. And I told him, he's like, you got it for how much? And from day one, he was very transparent and he was very open and honest. And he was like, man, that's a great deal. You did a really good job negotiating this contract. He didn't try and hide it and tell me, oh yeah, that's close to what I could buy it for. And do the whole sales pitch of, could you get it a little lower? He immediately recognized, he's like, this is a great deal. It's like, I'm either your buyer or I'm your partner on this deal, and I'll teach you how to fix and flip a house. And I was like, interesting.
From the first phone call?
From the first phone call. That first night we talked. And I knew something was different about him. Just, again, very, very energy driven. And he wanted to know about me. He didn't want to just know about the deal. How did you find me? What are you doing? What do you do for a living? Just very wanting to get to know me and build a relationship. And I was like, something's different here. So when I called him back the next day, I was like, hey, I'll take you up on your offer. And he's like, well, which one? And I was like, I really am in this to continue to learn. And I want to learn, and I'm okay with deferring a little bit of money. I don't need it right this second. I don't need to wholesale this for 10, 15K. I really would love to learn with you. He goes, okay, great, because this is going to be your easiest flip ever. It's like, it's a cosmetic flip. We'll be done in 30 days, and we'll put it right back on the market, and we'll probably make some much more money than what you would have made just selling it to me for 10 or 15K, which we did. it took a little longer than 30 days. We actually had a delayed close. This was my first time going through the full process, right, of getting under contract. He and I signed a JV agreement, going out and getting a hard money loan to basically fund this, because that's how we funded the 225 with a little bit of down payment, and then funding the renovation. So this is my first time going through this, and I was mind blown, but I was loving every second of it, because he was doing most of it. It's all in Palm Coast, about 90 minutes from us. And he was educating the whole time. Hey, this is what I did today. This is the delay, but don't be worried. This is normal. We actually couldn't close because of a hurricane, so we couldn't get insurance on that day, so it got deferred. And then after we closed, we had 2 more hurricanes. So I'm sitting there going like, we're in limbo. We're supposed to be doing this quickly. It took us like 2.5 months when it should have taken us less than 30 days.
Right.
And had to deal with some pool issues, worried about it flooding and all of that because of the heavy rains that were coming in.
Right.
And he handled everything. He was amazing, but he educated me as we went. And then we listed it, and I got to meet his realtor. And then all of a sudden, after we got done with this and we made $70K together, it was like, wow, how do we do this again? And he had this exact same thought. He was like, hey, this worked really, really well. I want to do 8 to 10 to 12 more of these next year, but I need a partner to do it. Would you do it? And I was like, whoa, which kind of take you back a little bit. We got under contract before I lost my job in September. So we had actively kind of started this, going through hurricanes, lost my job in November. We didn't close and sell it until December 30th of last year. So it was a kind of a wild ride through there. But that's where, again, that faith aspect was like, it was a big jump to even just go into this deal and not just like quickly exit it. I almost didn't even respond to the girl's text, the DM back that was like, no, but I want to sell my house. Because I was like, I don't know what to do. I've listened to videos, but I've never done anything like this.
And you're prospecting her for money, right?
Correct. I was prospecting her for EMD or double close. Yeah.
Right,
I was just...
You're doing your thing.
Correct.
Yep.
So to me, the reason I think I didn't just make a business out of that EMD was the bigger I could make my toolbox,
right,
the more useful I could be to all those around me.
Gotcha.
Again, that relationship connector, even you can call it, I'm very relationship driven. So now I know what you're good at, and then I go meet, Susie next door who needs something that you're good at. I put the 2 pieces together, and I never realized you can make money off of that and insert yourself into a deal like that. And then ultimately I'm getting better at these things because I'm seeing how you're doing what you're doing and how Susie's doing what she's doing. And I'm inserting myself into these deals, and I'm gaining confidence along the way. And now all of a sudden I'm like, well, yeah, I was a W-2 worker that was a doctor of physical therapy, but I didn't know anything about flipping a house. Now I do. I know about EMD. I know about the title, process. I know about the sale and marketing a house. I know what to look for when walking a house that could be a prospect. I know a lot more than I did, a year ago. And to me, that's when I'm most dangerous, is not just the knowledge, but how do you apply that knowledge? How do you put it into practice?
Right.
And man, I've gotten into some pretty amazing rooms, again, starting with yours. And yeah, the doors have just continued to open.
And I like how you mentioned, more tools in your tool belt. And I love to use those words because right now you're cultivating your physical therapy facility, right? Like when you have a patient come in and you train and work with them, you have every single tool accessible to you to make this person go from not walking to walking in a short period of time and getting that individual a result, right? And it's all driven by the tools and obviously your expertise, and you're able to combine those two to get that result that individual needs and obviously wants, right? Just like that, father needing to walk down the aisle for his daughter's wedding. He couldn't walk, but you knew deep down with the physical connection, the relationship that you have with him, the tools that are behind you at the facility that you're working at, combined with your knowledge, would get him that result, right? And that's the same thing. Like you go from transactional lending, learning that skill set, doing that mentorship program, jumping into, then from going there, going into fixing and flipping with a partner that you got referred to by someone in the community that you're in. And what people don't realize is you are building your physical therapy facility, but within real estate, because now you have these tools in your tool belt where you're now going to be able to effectively go out and say, you know what, this is what I want to do with this deal. Hey, this is what I want to do with this deal. Or, hey, this came across my desk. I can take advantage of it now. And that's actually very similar to what I do in my business, where, I do about 15, 20 wholesale deals a year. So you'll see me like putting out a deal that
Yep.
either can be,
Yep.
a creative finance wholesale deal or a cash wholesale deal. And those are just deals that have come across my desk, but I'm able to take advantage of them because I have that skill set in my tool belt.
Yep.
And that's bringing me in a couple extra $100K a year. But I'm able to take advantage of that because, again, I'm delegating. I have the tool in my tool belt. I'm smart, right? And, with you've done that same thing and you're replicating what you've come from in real estate. Like you're building that foundation. And a lot of people don't realize if they don't build that foundation, you build on quicksand.
Yep.
What you try to execute on, you're going to collapse very fast. And you're taking advantage of that. And so now you've gone from transactional funding to fix and flipping to now here lately you've now talking about a lot of, taking down RV parks and stuff like that. So let's get into that now. Because you're very much like me. It's funny because you get bored with stuff very fast.
Yeah.
I like to, and this is the way I operate. I get bored of stuff very fast, but the things that I've cultivated and created that I got good at, I just delegate and let other people do and take a small piece of the pie. Because there's other people willing to do what you can do better than I can do it, and you can do it, and I can still make money from it. And now you're creating a business.
Yep.
So like when you do something, try not to walk away from it completely. Say, hey, who can I have do this? Maybe who's new in real estate, who's hungry, who I can teach them the blueprint, right?
Yeah.
Or get somebody on my team to teach them the blueprint, and you being a real CEO.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what I do. That's what I do with my management company. That's what I do with my listing company. That's what I do with my short-term rental portfolio, my co-living. I'm really, really hands-off, and I've created semi-passive businesses, that yield me great returns on my time and, everything. So that's like the biggest difference between, but I see with you, you're like, you know what? I want to learn this in real estate. I want to learn this in real estate. I want to learn this real estate. And you're getting very excited. And what we call it is the shiny object syndrome, Where you're at now is going from fix and flipping, which you're still doing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You're still doing those, and now you're pivoting into what? Or are you still doing the fix and flip? Or do you plan to do 12, 15 fix and flips?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we finished that one the end of last year, and then we're fortunate enough to find two, one fix and flip, one novation that are currently listed. So we are actively still fix and flipping in Palm Coast. But Robert and I discussed it and said, hey, we need to find a way to be more hands-off. Yeah, we still enjoy this. Robert is exactly like what you were just saying. And the next couple we agreed that we were going to take on, but we were going to find ways to delegate, not be hands-on. Because again, most of them were in Palm Coast. So Robert was there every day, putting his heart and soul into these projects for 2-3 months. And the problem is also if you're doing that, nobody's finding leads to refill that pipeline afterwards. So we've talked about it, said, you've got good contractors in place, trust them to do their job, leave them to do that so we can continue to do the other things. And I think the big segue to that was in March when we went to Squad Up and joined. That was the first time I actually joined Sub 2 Gator and Owners Club all in the same 24 hours. I joined Gator on day one and then came back the next day and was like, man, I don't know why I'm kicking my heels around anymore. Like, I need to join Sub 2. And that was the day Robert joined Owners Club, and they made us an offer that we pretty much couldn't turn down because we joined as business partners. So we got a pretty heavy discount, which was awesome. But since joining that and realizing, again, organization as far as like owning my calendar and being super intentional with my time rather than just trying to tackle anything that came at me and everybody that needed my attention that day, it was just like trying to swat gnats at a barbecue. You're never really going to be effective. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you credit for this too. We had a really awesome conversation on the way back from Squad Up and at Squad Up. We flew back together. And even since then, having some conversations, and you've helped me kind of hone in and focus a little bit closer on one thing rather than 10. So yes, we do still intend to fix and flip, but trying to more delegate and automate and find a team that can kind of help us with that as the properties continue to come up, but are actively trying to buy more cash flowing assets now instead of just buying one, flipping it, and then selling it, because you got to pay taxes on the end of that at the end of the year. Everybody hears, oh, you guys made $70K on that. Well, a good chunk of that still has to go to taxes.
Yep.
So buying some assets to then offset some of that tax burden, but also year after year, it's going to appreciate, and I'm going to make cash flow off of it as well. So that's ultimately the goal.
Yeah, so this is what I tell people, like there's a lot of exit strategies in real estate. There's so many things you can do in real estate to make money. And the things that you started out with, the transactional funding and fixing and flipping, I always tell people that's dating your money, not marrying your money.
Yeah.
And me early on, I always knew since 2015, and that's when I first got in the game, I always knew that any activity that I did in real estate, I wanted it to be where I was marrying my money, not dating my money. So my primary focus was always buying assets. I wanted to buy assets, buy assets, buy assets. Like I just knew that I wanted to own real estate. And what actually supplemented all that, also supplemented that was all the other stuff I had in the background, like being a realtor gave me money, wholesaling gave me money, having Airbnbs gave me money, having my property management business gave me money. And all these things combined obviously add more money to the pot eventually. And I take that money and I reinvest it into real estate, or I lend it out, right? Because I do a little bit of lending as well, but not much, right? But you're at a point where you're like, you know what? Everything that I'm doing, all the activities I'm doing is dating my money, not marrying my money. And I now want to get into owning real estate. Because just like you said, not only do you get, cash flow, but you get appreciation, you get depreciation, you get leverage, you can refinance in the future, you can do cost segregation. There's so many things you can do to manipulate that one piece of real estate. That's why I love real estate. It's like if you know how to utilize that tool the proper way and use it as a vehicle to get you from point A to point B into bigger asset classes. Because a lot of people are like, hey, should I start out in single family or should I go into the big dog stuff like the multifamily and other asset classes? The big thing here is I tell people is like, if you start out in single family, that's fine, but you don't have to start out in single family. You can go bigger right off the gate, and I actually wish that I went bigger faster. Yeah. I stayed in the single family space for quite some time, and that's okay. And, there's a time and place for everything, but, that's got me into bigger asset classes. And now I know you're now to a point where you're like, you know what, I've dabbled in transactional lending. I'm dabbling in fix and flipping. And now I want to really own the product that I've been, selling and that I've been talking about a lot. So you're now pivoting into other asset classes that have piqued your interest because, like you said earlier on in the podcast, you're saying, hey, man, me and my family love to travel. We really love going to North Carolina, right? Yep. So now you're kind of looking into wedding venues and short-term rentals and stuff like that, right?
Yep. So we're looking at a handful of different things now. You mentioned RV parks and wedding venues and Airbnbs. I love Western North Carolina, the Smoky Mountains. It's where I grew up vacationing every summer. So it's always been a dream to own an Airbnb up there, and we will at some point this year.
100%.
But the biggest thing, I think, when you talk about thinking you have to start small, of course, that's what I wanted, right? Was own 5 or 6 rentals, and in 20 years after I'm an old retired PT, I have 5 or 6 rentals that are paid off, and that's what's going to be my my retirement. That's obviously changed since then, and now it's much more of, do I have to start in single family? Because the amount of work it takes to do that one deal for that one small little single family house,
right,
a lot of times is the same, or it's actually even more than I'm finding out with an RV park. Sometimes when you're talking to these bigger businesses or RV parks or commercial assets, they already speak the language a lot more than maybe a mom and pop seller that doesn't know much about the asset that they're holding in a house.
Right.
They think it's worth $500,000 when really it's 400, whatever.
You're doing more sophisticated of a seller.
Exactly. And they already kind of speak that language. You don't have to educate them on, especially things that you and I like to invest in, which is creative finance, subject to seller finance. Those kinds of things aren't abnormal terms. They've heard them before. And a lot of times somebody that's built a business from nothing that's now worth $2, $3, $4, $5 million, like we always mentioned, they may want to defer those capital gains by seller financing it to you rather than taking that whole big $5 million chunk. They may want a smaller down payment of $500,000 or $1 million,
right,
and then defer those payments over with interest also. So they're actually getting more than that $5 million, but they're having to wait for it. Some people are okay with that. Some people aren't. Some people want that money to move it right into a next asset, and that makes sense. That's not my ideal seller. But that's ultimately, again, with RV parks, I think what interests me most, because it's going to allow me to travel. Our biggest goal that my wife and I have always said is when we had kids at a young age, we got married at a young age, when our kids are out of the house, we want to rent out our house, we'll have that RV, and we want to travel to all the national parks. I said, well, we might as well have a RV park to stop at or to manage. And I realized that it's probably a whole lot less to manage and a lot easier to delegate and build a business around than, say, a single family rental that's, knocking at the door at 11 o'clock at night that the furnace is broken or the AC. We live in Florida. We don't know what a furnace is, but
yeah, exactly. Well, I always tell people, like, in the single family game right now, you're only really making money one way, and that's co-living.
Yep.
You know, that's the only thing I will preach right now that's going to make you money. I mean, it's got to be non-traditional stuff like co-living, assistant living, Airbnb. You know, these exit strategies when you take down a real estate, a single family piece of real estate, these are the only things that's going to actually get you money in the pocket. And, you know, obviously I spoke about there being a lot of benefits to owning real estate just now, but that is the number one exit strategy. These are the number one exit strategies that are actually going to get you cash in hand every single month, you know. And like you said, when I took down my first commercial deal and I saw the time and energy I put into it to get it to where it was and under contract and all that, I'm like, man, you're right, man. This is just the same time as it did for a single family. Mm-hmm. And so you quickly realize after being an investor after a while, and it seems like you've caught on to this a lot quicker than I did. You know, I built and I bought all these single family assets since 2016, 2017. I own all these single family doors and small multifamily. And my portfolio is doing really good. No complaints there. And it's put me where I'm at today. I'm thankful for it. But you quickly realize, like, it's not really that scalable. It's not the most efficient way to invest, you know? And that's what really got me into the commercial space. And then, as you know, like, I'm a short-term rental guy, you know? And I'm like, well, if you can run a short-term rental business, you can do like boutique hotels, you can do RV parks, you know, and then you have some of them that have the combination of, you know, RV and wedding venues, and that experiential, you know, stays are really cool, you know. And people want to be outdoors, you know, and so that's, you know, that's what really gravitated in for me. It was a natural pivot, you know, into those bigger asset classes. So right now I only want to buy, you know, co-living if I'm going to buy a single family property, you know. Fixing and flipping is great, but you really got to get a steep discount. You got to really have an eye on market and know the market that you're in, you know.
That's definitely something that we're finding a lot too. And I think kind of some of the reason we're pivoting, but also I know to look at other people in the industry that are being successful with it. And I think part of the interest in RV parks was your interest in RV parks. The more I got to know you and realize, you know, the way you run your systems and your businesses was something I wanted to emulate. So that's ultimately kind of what drew me more to it. And also the same thing with co-living. That's something that, again, instead of just continuing to get these shiny object syndrome, I tried to look inward and see, okay, what do I need? And truthfully, I think there's a good team around. And we've started to develop that with Robert and I and start to look at buying those cash flowing assets and making this automated, you know, conveyor belt that's going to continue to produce as income. So then maybe we can go do these fun projects like, you know, big things in North Carolina.
So someone who's just getting in the game, I mean, again, there's so many ways to skin the cat. There's so many ways to make money in real estate. What would you recommend for them to do to not have shiny object syndrome? Or what are you doing right now to kind of mitigate you from having shiny object syndrome? Because obviously you're a fast mover, and most people aren't as fast as you are, right? Like, you think of something, you execute on it. Like I sent you a podcast mic the other day, and it was kind of scary. I'm on the phone and telling you about it, and you bought it, and it's shipped to your house within 2 hours from Amazon.
Some would call that impulsive. I just like to call it taking action.
Yeah. But like, so that's why, again, that's why I brought you here today, is because you're a doer. And I find that very hard to find people who are actually doers. There's a lot of people that hit me up all the time, Trevor. I kid you not, bro. My DMs, yo, Javi, how do I do this co-living, or how do I do this Airbnb, or how do I do this? And I give them advice, and now I'm to the point where I just say, hey, watch my videos. Watch my videos. Because it's not really worth my time. Like, I do want to help that person, but look, you know what? I've already recorded a video on that. Why don't you go to my YouTube channel? Don't forget to subscribe to it. Give me some love, and look this video that I actually give you a breakdown from A to Z on how to do co-living. You know? But like, those people never take action. The very few of them is what I'm saying. Very, like 1 or 2% statistically proven, right? And so what are you doing right now, being that you did have shiny object syndrome, which you probably still do have shiny object syndrome? What are you doing to really, you know, mitigate that? You know, what would you give some advice on that for people who are thinking?
And I'll answer that, and I'll say that you're the second person that's told me that. The second successful real estate investor, and I'll give credit where credit's due. Somebody that you know as well. It's Chelsea. So our friend Chelsea actually owns title company Magnolia Title here in town, and I reached out to her, same thing, trying to get started, and she's like, yeah, everybody reaches out to me, they know I've been successful with real estate investing, but nobody really does anything with it. So why are you any different? I was like, just give me a chance. Like, we're friends. Give me a chance, right? Of course. And I'm sure she was skeptical. She said the same thing. Like 20 people before that had always asked her, and she gave advice.
Yep.
And would take them out and introduce them to somebody at a lunch or give them a book, and nobody would ever take any action with it. Well, she gave me that first book. I was done with it within 2 weeks, which for me is pretty quick because I do not like sitting and reading a book. I'll listen to an audiobook all day. Came back to her. I said, okay, what's next? I said, what? You already read it? I said, yeah. She's like, well, nobody's ever even read the first one. So I appreciate that. And I guess that's just the way I am. Like, if I'm going to ask somebody for something, I'm not going to do them the disservice or the slight of them not acting on it. Like, your time's worth something. So why would I ask for it and then do nothing with it? So, but to get back to your question of shiny object syndrome, and I think I'm finally finding that you've got to surround yourself with the right people, you being one of them, Chelsea being another, but also the team that we've built. I mentioned Robert. Robert and I are partners that we've done Fix and Flip together.
Love Robert.
Yes. Fantastic person. Again, wouldn't be where I am today without him. But we've also found other like-minded people within Sub2, within Owners Club, that think very similar, that are doers, that are kind of sick and tired of just kind of dabbling. And if we can put all of our superpower minds together and actually have very clear, definitive roles where I can focus on what I'm really good at, Robert can focus on what he's really good at, and Ann and Chad can focus on what they're really good at, we can take down some of these assets, which we've decided, I think, to start focusing on co-living as well, and focus on that without just jumping around to all these other different things about RV parks and, everything. Right now, we decided,
Which me and you had a conversation at the coffee shop with.
Yeah, not long ago. And you said the same thing.
Right.
Was like, the riches are in the niches.
Yep.
But also, you got to get really good at something before you
Right.
go and try and do everything.
Yep.
And I think that's been kind of the story of my life, honestly. I'll say PT is the only other thing that I can really relate to that I actually put time, effort, money, a lot of time and education into, and got really good at and stuck with for a very long time. And again, that's why I can still go back and treat 1 or 2 days a week, or not go treat for 3 weeks and come back and it's automatic for me at this point.
Yeah.
But real estate is not that yet, and it will be. But with the right people and surrounding yourself with that, rather than just trying to do it on my own, I was trying to do everything on my own. Once I get in the room with these 4 people, or again, have ideas to bounce off of somebody who's got more experience and more knowledge, that learning curve goes from like this steep hill to like this nice gradual slope where we're all learning together and sharing that knowledge. And boom, before you know it, we're taking action. We're kicking butt and taking names.
And one powerful thing about that is you're actually bouncing ideas off each other, and you're utilizing each other's skill sets to move forward at a lot quicker pace.
Absolutely.
Every time I look at something, anytime I want to do something, I'm always like, who's doing it the best?
Yep.
How do I get around them? How do I get around the people that they're around?
Yep.
If I can't have access to that person, how do I get around the people that they're around?
Yeah.
And how do I get into those rooms because I want to become a product of that environment? And that's what that is a lot of people think that, hey, if I want to do anything, that I have to be the best at it. Why don't you find out who's the best at it?
Yeah.
And even if you're not the best at what you want to do, maybe they're really good at it, and you can utilize their skill set, and you can bring your skill set in, or whatever you have. Because here's the reality: we all have something to give.
Yeah.
There's no one that knows it all. We all have something to give. We all can bounce ideas off each other. We all have different tools in our tool belt. And you actually learn that as you continue to work with people and build that relationship to see, like, what's your strength? What's my strength? How do you complement me? How do I complement you?
Yeah.
And that's something that is super important, and people need to figure out, like, this is essential when you're trying to do something, is figure out the rooms you need to be in of the people that are doing it the best, the biggest, the baddest. And if there's that one person that you want to be around and you can't have access to them, I'm sure that they have some type of meetup that they put together, or they have some type of community they put together that you can join and have access to.
Yep.
And people don't think that, hey, they can tap into that. And like you said earlier, imposter syndrome.
Yep.
And that's a real thing.
Yep.
And people have doubts in their selves and stuff like that. So
absolutely.
Right now, obviously, you're working through the shiny object syndrome, and I think that a lot of people within Sub2, right, which is a community. I know we've been mentioning Sub2 a lot, guys, and Owners Club. These are real estate communities for you guys who are listening. And Trevor's a part of both those, and I'm actually a part of one of them, which is Sub2. I'm not a part of Owners Club, and Trevor has now gone on to now expedite his learning curve again, shorten the learning curve. How do you shorten it, quick as possible?
Yeah.
Because he's all about like, how do I get the express ticket to everything that I want to do?
Yeah.
Which that's the way I look at stuff. Is like, how do I get the express ticket to everything that I want to do? Like, could we go on YouTube? Can we go on Google? Can we go on Chat GPT to learn it? Yeah, but I'm sure there's somebody who's already put a blueprint that works, right? And let's not reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And so I love what you and Robert and Ann are doing. I love Ann. I love Robert. I don't know Chad, but you guys are a good, solid team. And I remember telling you at the coffee shop the other day, I was like, dude, like you're doing way too many things. Like just hone in on one or two things, and not even one or two things. Just create a buy box of what you're looking to buy, and then that way you can be an expert in that asset class.
Yep.
And especially when you're doing commercial, bro, there's so many different asset classes. Like you got to be an expert at one, not all of them.
Yep.
And then when you become good at that one and you can delegate and you can leverage to get other people to do what you were doing better than you can, then you can go look at something else.
Yep.
And let that continue to work in the background, be the CEO,
Yeah. Yep.
And then that way you can continue to scale. And that's what I did with everything that I've done is
Yep.
I just become the CEO, I'm not going taking real estate photography pictures. Actually, matter of fact, I just had someone that I'm partnering with on a deal today hit me up and say, hey, man, you want to meet me Sunday to walk the property? I said, no. Bro, you're walking the property already.
Yeah.
I don't need to walk the property with you.
Why do you need both of you there?
Yeah. I said, if anything, you want to FaceTime me, that's fine. But you don't need me. You know what you're doing. I know what I'm doing. Like, go and walk the property. I'm not going to drive 45 minutes to walk the property, drive 45 minutes back, and then spend an hour there. That's 3 hours on my day.
Yep.
Just like you said earlier, you're being more intentional with your time.
Yep. Which before that, I used to think I needed to be there every day, and that was partnering with Robert at first. I was like, how's this going to work? I'm here, he's there. And he wanted me there, I feel like, a lot more than I was there, and I kind of had to push back a little, and we both finally realized neither of us needs to be there every day. We need to be doing other things which are more valuable with our time and delegate those tasks. So that is definitely a skill that we are learning, and it's pushed very big time in Owners Club with time delegation and managing and owning your schedule, your calendar.
Yeah. So we've talked about a lot of stuff that sounds good, right? What are some of the pitfalls that you've encountered, whether it's in transactional lending or flipping, fix and flipping, or even trying to buy some of these bigger assets that have not gone the right way, that have put you maybe in a bad position? Yeah. What are some things that you can give the audience so they know that, like, dude, I'm a real guy. Yeah. I take action and shit doesn't work out because, here's the reality, bro. Like, we're not trying to paint this perfect picture. I've made mistakes. I've lost money. I'm sure you've probably lost money and made big mistakes. Like, this is part of the process, but it's just about how you get, you might be down, but it's about how you get back up. Yeah. So what are some of the things it could be fixing and flipping, transactional funding, or even, it could even be a relationship. Yeah. What would you give to somebody that's like been that comes to mind right now and you're like, holy shit, like I'll never do that again. That was a learning lesson, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. When you talk about relationships, I got a big one in mind. When you talk about real estate, I got plenty of them in mind. Things are going to happen. You're going to make a mistake, and that's okay. What's not okay is to then let that dictate your next decision and let that ground you completely. The only way you fail is if you give up. Mm-hmm. If you get back up and you keep going and you learn from that mistake and you keep going, things will work out how they're supposed to. That happened in real estate. Again, even the first thing, the hurricane, I mean, those are small instances. But yeah, I mean, things are going to go wrong. People are not always going to be what they are what they portray. And I think you could say that too. Like when you say, hey, I'm a real guy. That's what I try and lead with no matter what, whether it's in real estate, PT, photography, no matter what. This is me, no matter what, whether I meet, my famous celebrity tomorrow or I'm talking to one of my family members. It's the same me no matter what. In business, I've learned that not everybody's like that. And you can also choose who you want to do business with. I want to do business with people I know, like, and trust. So that for me, when I first meet somebody, that trust, that relationship that I want to build and that I want to, get to know them a little bit, if there's not good vibes there, usually I'm going to kind of try and steer clear just because at this point in my life, I don't have to, I'm not desperate. And a lot of times that's what desperation looks like is people just get so desperate to do a deal, make a deal, even if the deal doesn't make sense. That was me at first. It's like, I just want to get my first deal. Once you get that, then it's like, okay, well now I want to get my next deal. Well, if your first deal sucked, you did poor due diligence, you could have lost a ton of money and that could be your only deal. And maybe that's your exit out of real estate. Or maybe you got really lucky and you made really good money like I did on my first fix and flip. But then the same thing, if you don't underwrite the next deal, and you could very quickly lose that much money you just made and more, just by getting into something bad or getting into it with bad people, or not being careful and cautious and going the right, title company, real estate attorney with your contracts and make sure you're legally protected.
Right.
A lot of money that gets passed around, and it could very easily go sideways if you're not careful. So,
have you lost money before in the deal?
I will say we lost money. We lost a lot of credit I mentioned this before with the Airbnb arbitrage. So
Okay.
we joined a mentorship for that, which was $10K. We financed the majority of it, which was
On a credit card?
yeah. Or no, it was actually through a firm. So that's the only thing that our real estate attorney ended up saving us in it. It's like if you would have put it on your credit card and then
You could have did a chargeback.
Yep. Well, we did it through a firm, and a firm, because we had a legal contract with a firm, I canceled it within 72 hours because my wife and I got into it and we were like, this isn't exactly what we wanted. It was just a course and it was a Zoom. You'd get on, you'd ask questions. It's not what we were looking for. So I filed, and this was in July of last year.
You filed suit.
Okay. Well, at first I just filed for a refund, and I got a hold of the guy and was like, oh no, we don't do refunds. I checked when I signed up for this. You said this call is recorded and I have you verbally saying that this is refundable in 72 hours. He goes, you're right. And I was like, without me saying that, would you have given in? Would you have just taken advantage of somebody else that maybe wasn't thinking of that? Right. He's like, oh, we got to get you in touch with our business manager. So I get in touch with the business manager. A week and a half later was his closest appointment. I was like, okay. I said, don't worry, since you already requested it, it's fine. Even though it's 2 weeks into your membership, blah blah blah. We'll give you the refund. I said, okay, great. When can I expect all of that? Because I only put in like $100, and then the other $9,900 was financed. So, well, when can I expect that off of my credit, everything to show, 30 to 45 business days. And I was like, really? Just to, okay, whatever. 2 months goes by, 3 months goes by, 4 months goes by, 5 months goes by, and I'm still contacting them and going, what's going on? Basically, it got harder and harder to get a hold of them, and they just stopped responding. And then finally, after 7 months, I actually reached out to a friend that was here and said, can you help me with this? He's an attorney. He said, oh, I read your contract. It's only in the state of South Carolina. We had to get an attorney from South Carolina, and then not many of them would even take it because it was such a small claim. But finally, I got somebody that took it, and as soon as he wrote a demand letter to them, they refunded me within a week. And was like, oh, this guy now means business. But they asked me for power of attorney if they could go after this company because this wasn't the first time that they'd seen this happen.
Gotcha.
So that was... My credit went from 800 down to 620.
Oh, wow.
I mean, and at that time we had been looking to try and get a new house, which pretty good. We couldn't do that, which honestly was a blessing in disguise.
Couldn't qualify.
We were looking at houses we shouldn't have gotten into and clearly lost my job, and I'm glad we didn't get into that. But yeah, it was affecting business. Robert and I were applying for business credit and applying for hard money loans, and some of them do look at your credit. A lot of them don't. But yeah, that was definitely affecting business lines of credit. I was trying to get out. I was getting really low 0% interest cards versus other people I'm hearing getting 50K. I'm getting 5 because I've got this big ding.
You're high risk,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. So that definitely affected some stuff. But actually at Squad Up is when I got the call that they had finally given it back, and my credit score got returned to what it was before. So
wow. So about a year of you fighting this.
Yeah, it was 10 months.
So how did you what would you tell people? How did you go from not giving up and having that perseverance? I feel like most people would have been like, man, forget this, man. I tried my very first, because that was actually the very first course you bought, right?
Yeah.
Was not a success.
Yeah.
And that was what, 10K?
Yeah.
So you lost the very first shot. So how did you get that perseverance to continue to go over and over and over and keep moving forward and just say, you know what, I'm going to work on this in the back burner, but it's not going to stop me from moving forward?
That's just not my DNA, man. It's if you know me, I'm an endurance athlete, so pain and suffering for long durations is what I enjoy. But also, I had a mom and dad that worked their asses off growing up. Didn't make a ton at the jobs they were doing, but still worked their asses off. And they were going to be the best at it, and still were amazing, amazing parents. So it's just never in my DNA. You don't stop when you're tired. You stop when you're done. There's still work to be done. Get up and do it. And my wife's annoyed with that. I'm sure when she watches this, she'll say the same thing. I don't know how to just sit and rest and be. This next week when we go off and we're actually going out to Monterey for Owners Club retreat. We're going out 3 days early and staying 3 days late intentionally, so that those 3 days before and those 3 days after are just to spend time with my family and to put work away.
Do you shut your phone off? You don't?
I usually don't. And at this
Okay.
time in my career, I'm like, man, that next call could be the next deal that we need that could pay for this entire trip, you know,
Right.
that kind of thing. But I fully intend to. And I got a new phone not long ago, and it no longer syncs with my watch.
Yeah.
So my old one would buzz, and every
Yeah.
time we'd sit here and I'd
Yeah.
be looking.
Yeah.
And
It's
for the first
distracting.
week, I was like really almost having like withdrawals of like not knowing what was going on. And now I love it. I absolutely love it because I'm like,
Gotcha.
you know what? I have my schedule. I'm intentional with my time. I know that I'm here. The important people know where I am right now because it's on my calendar. If they
Love
want to
it.
know where I am, they know I'm right here in your podcast studio because it's on my calendar.
Wow.
And when I go back to my phone later, I'll pick up where I left off. And anything else that wasn't pressing or is pressing, I'll address when it gets there. And
Yeah.
and man, it's given me so much more clarity and sanity too.
Right.
So
So what would be a tip, right? That's super important. I could see these viewers wondering in their head, like, you're a family man. You have two beautiful children and a wife. You're pivoting into entrepreneurship. You just said, hey man, I want to take every single phone call.
Yeah.
Like I want to work every single
Yeah.
freaking hour of the day. Like, but you have a wife. You have to fulfill her needs, right?
Mhm.
You and your wife actually come first, and then your kids come second.
Yeah.
You know, and then everything else after that. What is one thing that you'd give people, like, how do you really keep that healthy relationship and keep that separation? Like, I know the Apple Watch, getting rid of
Yeah.
that was one thing, but do you have time on your calendar that you set aside just for her and the kids? And it sounds like you're being more intentional about your calendar, right? It sounds
Yeah.
like it's a more new thing that you're working on.
Yep. I've always been
What's-
good about the calendar, even from the W-2 days of
You use Apple Calendar?
Outlook. Outlook.
Oh,
and
you use
Google,
Outlook,
and
okay.
I've tried to blend the two of them, but
Okay.
everything's going Google, so it probably very soon all
Be
be
Google?
Google Calendar.
Okay.
But yes, I do set aside time. Pretty much every morning I set a time is time for me. And I'll argue to your point of wife comes first. I would say you have to come first.
Yes.
too.
Correct.
So
Yes, you're right. Sorry. You're
you're good.
Your
You're good.
relationship, then your
Yeah.
kids.
Yep.
Yes.
And I would say my relationship with God and my faith is I've formed that into myself, because if you don't take care of yourself, how am I going to take care of three others?
Correct.
So again, I'm very fortunate. You're very fortunate. You've met my family, my wife. You know how amazing they are, and she's super supportive. She's the one that, again, in January when I said I'm not going back to W-2, I don't want to. I was looking for affirmation from her, and she immediately, without missing a beat, gave
Really?
me that.
Believed in you.
She knew. I mean, we've been together. Wow, we've been married almost 10 years. We've been together since 2014,
Yeah.
right when I graduated PT school. So 11, 12 years.
But do you think that was because you're an athlete and she knew that you always cross the finish line? Do you think that was like in
Yeah.
her, from like the determination of Trevor
Yeah,
was always persevering through things?
Yep.
That kind of was like a natural thing for, okay, I'm
Yeah.
quitting my W-2. Honey, I know you're going to cross that finish line.
Yep. and I think you're exactly right. She knows me better than anybody, and knows that whatever I set my mind to, I'm not going to fail at it, because I can't. 3 people depending on you changes a lot of things. My life changed a lot when I got married, and a lot when I had 2 kids. I don't know how to quit. I don't know how to give up, because so many people rely and depend on that like that's just, it's just not a possibility. It's not in my DNA. It's not my brain. So she knows when I said that and I was committed to that, and I was like, I don't want to go back to this. She knew it was like, okay, whatever you set your mind to, you're going to be successful, and I'm going to support you. And she's done that, because I've been on a lot of calls and in and out of the house and making trips and whatnot, not necessarily making the time for her and them that I would like to, but that's something that's very quickly changing. And again, with being more intentional. With
So
the
are
calendar.
they on your calendar every day? Like, is your wife have time on your calendar, and does your children
when she
have
and
time?
when she and I do date night, I'll put it on there. And it started to annoy her, because I don't know if it started to annoy her, but I think she's starting to get used to it, because I'll be like, hey, are you going to work out today? Put it on the calendar. So I know. And she's like, oh, no. And because she also knows that if she puts it on the calendar, that's a commitment, and I'm going to hold her to it. She's the type of like, oh, if I feel like it, I'll go, which is fine. Again, everybody's different. But like when we go on date nights, I'll put it on there date night. Or my kids and I have gotten really into rock climbing this past 2 months. I'll put it on there like a 2-hour block of rock climbing with the kids, or, just mess around the house or whatever. So yeah, I am getting more intentional with putting them on there too, because those are non-negotiables. Those are ones that have to come first. Church every Sunday, walking them to school when it's the school year time. Tucking them in at night. I want to be there as much as I can. Obviously, there's things that happen at night and meetups and whatnot and dinners, but as much as I can, I'm there for each and everything. And obviously, sometimes you have to make choices. Sometimes you can't be there all the time, every time. There's definitely sacrifice. It's definitely a grind, but it's worth it. It's 100% worth it because at the end of the day, I control that calendar. Nobody else does. Nobody else tells me when I'm clocking in, when I'm clocking out. If I want to get up and do work at 5 a.m., I get up and do work for 3 hours before anybody else gets up, and I'm the most productive then. If I want to go for a run and work out, I do it. You know, it's a blessing.
Nice, man. That's awesome. And I'm sure a lot of people get a lot of good value out of that, you know, just being more intentional with your calendar, putting your family in your calendar. Like, that's one thing I got to get better with. Like, you know, I'm not a shining star. Like, I struggle with my calendar. I try to get better at using it, you know. That's one of those tools I definitely don't use enough of. And it keeps your life organized. So
big time.
What would you say your biggest why is to keep you driven?
Family, for sure.
Family?
Yeah. I know what I want for them, for my wife and for my kids, and that's what kind of keeps me going. And that's to be able to, you know, eventually graduate to a bigger house and some nicer things, but ultimately it's the experiences. My wife and I have looked at and said, I would much rather travel every summer than buy the newest car, or the newest watch, or the newest, like, I mean, we've got a lot of really awesome friends with awesome, cool stuff that we get to go hang out with. We get to share some of our experiences with them and bring them along on these vacations. We get to go with them and share in their boat or their beach house or whatever. And we're blessed with that. So I would say that is my biggest why, is providing for them the experiences and the family time and the different places. Again, about to go to Monterey and Big Sur with them, going to Pace's house in Montana later this summer and going fly fishing with him. Like, that's why I want to like do better and have more of that, more of the experiences versus more of the things. I don't care too much about all that, but yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. You know, a lot of people are stuck on, you know, especially in today's day and age, like, hey, I want the newest car, I want the newest watch, I want the newest this and that. That's very expensive and stuff like that, you know. When you feel like enough's enough, like, you know, let's say, you know, you're hit your real estate empire, you know, what are you going to ever feel like you're going to, you know, pull back a little bit, or enough's enough, or are you just going to keep paying it forward? What's your...
And I'm glad you said pay it forward, because I think that's a good point. I think no, I don't think I'm never gonna be the guy to be like, all right, I'm retiring at 50, which, you know, it's coming faster than I care to expect. 14 more
crazy,
years,
dude.
But by 50, I would highly anticipate being able to pull back, have a little bit more free time. My kids will both be out of the house by then, so then we'll be on the road. We'll be either in an RV traveling or some other form of traveling, but I'll still have obviously some form of business and real estate. And I would love to continue, like you just mentioned, to pay it forward, to give back, because that's always people like yourself that are further along than me, and I've seen how you've kind of taken me under your wing and just freely given without any expectation of you know, compensation or whatever. It's that's what I want to give. And truthfully, people are like, well, why do you want to make more money? I want to make more money so I can give more money.
Right.
I want to give more back to people. I want to start a foundation. I want to be able to give to my church freely and you know, give anonymously. It's not like I'm giving for recognition.
Right.
I want to give to make an impact on other people who maybe aren't in those same situations, or maybe want to get on the journey that I've been on, but don't see a path forward. Maybe that's what my giving is giving my time and my, you know, my knowledge of the process. So that's truthfully what I don't think I'd ever stop. Love to go do mission trips. I'd love to, again, give more and mentor more people. That's something I really enjoyed in PT as well, was mentoring younger therapists and helping them along. Same thing in this. I want to one day be in your shoes, where I'm able to reach back and give people a hand up.
Right. And the emotional currency.
Yes.
You want to get paid with that. Yeah. Because really at the end of the day, like, when is it not about the money and, you know, you paying it forward? Yeah. Because you're going to get to a point like that, right? Yep. You make your millions of dollars and it's just like, you know, shit, I've already done this. Now it's something, you know, it's kind of like Pace Morby. Do you think he's doing it for money? No, not at all. He's not doing it for money. He's already a multi-millionaire, you know. I'm sure to be a billionaire, you know, very soon.
I'm
you know,
very sure of that.
For everything he's got going on. But now it's more of like emotional currency, changing people's lives. Like, this is what I came in this world for.
Yep.
You know, so that's super important. So, man, dude, you've dropped so many good gems today, and I'll be honest, man, I could just kind of go on and on and on. And, you know, these guys in the background are probably like kicking our asses like, dude,
get out of here.
We're ready to get out of here. And I mean, I can really honestly, you're one of those guests that I can just ask question over question, but you know, the prime thing here, guys, is I want you guys to learn is like, most people watching this are probably a 9-to-5er. and they're in a point where they're just like, how do I get out of the rat race? How do I become something better? Who am I? And when you were in that same exact position, months ago, and you've taken imperfect action.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people use, excuses like, oh, I got a wife, I got a family, I have this tie, this, that, and that.
Yep.
And it's the victim mentality.
Mm-hmm.
It's the scarcity mindset. And today in the podcast, you've really have deep dive on, the things you've done to overcome those and persevere through those, and sharing your story. And again, bro, to be honest with you, bro, I can keep going, and jamming out. Like, this is, don't get me wrong. Like, I want to continue to talk to you, but the value that you've given today has been amazing, brother. And like, I learn from it, and I always want to be a student. I always want to learn. There's things that you say, and, just so you know, man, I look up to you. I'm 35. I don't have a family. I don't have kids. You do have a family, and you have kids. I don't know if you remember. I asked you at the ball game that we went to. I said, "How's it feel like being a father?"
Yeah, I do.
I don't know if you remember that.
I remember.
Because obviously that's on my mind. And like, I don't have that yet. And that's in my future.
You will.
Yeah, exactly. It's in my future, and I think I'll be a great dad. But
absolutely.
You're a role model to me, so don't get it twisted, brother. Like,
appreciate that.
I know, you look at me and, a different point of view, but yeah, man, you're a role model, and I love what you're doing, and I love the growth that you're just excelling, man. And I'm glad that you're with a good group of people. I love Robert, and they're all great people. So we're going to continue to build, together, and, get to that Mount Everest together, a day at a time, taking imperfect action. So what are some funny things people knew about you that you like to do, you can give the audience? And
funny things that people know about me?
No, what are some funny things like, that people should know about, like you like to do, or, it could be fun things or funny things, silly things, or what are some things you can share?
Oh man, I love outdoors, being outdoors, camping, hiking. I love to, again, mention photography, but the nerd in me still loves rocket launches. Living in Orlando, we're super close to that.
We still haven't done a rocket launch together.
I was just gonna say they keep getting pushed, and there's a lot of things going on with Trump and Elon. So I think there's going to be some shakeup in that. There's a lot of different budget cuts that have come out, and different things for media. So unfortunately, I don't know that it'll all be the same anymore, but it will go on. Let's put it that way.
Right. We still have Blue Origin.
Yes. Yeah. And they're supposed to fly later this summer. So they're supposed to put New Glenn up again.
And they're building a huge facility out that way, right?
They are. There's a ton. And then SpaceX is building another couple towers to land Starship eventually here too.
I think Titusville would be a good market to invest into.
Yeah.
It's a sleepy market.
It is.
It's slow, cheap real estate.
It is.
But think about all the growth and the job growth.
Cocoa, Cape Canaveral. I mean, jobs aren't going anywhere out there, that's for sure. No. Well, I say that. Some may because of budget cuts, and we just found that out again, unfortunately, yesterday with one of our media correspondents got let go. But, I agree with you with that. I would say fun things I like to do is just be with my family, be outdoors, go camping, go hiking. Rock climbing is something I've always enjoyed. Anything physical activity, exercise, I love it. I mentioned there's a couple screws loose in my head because I'm that endurance athlete that loves to go do marathons and Ironman and all that kind of fun stuff. But yeah, other than that, I'm just a regular guy. Love to spend time with my family. Love to spend time with my friends. Love some good bourbon. So
love it, bro. So dang, dude, that's awesome. I didn't know that. So I'll bring some bourbon. I got some exclusive bottles that I'll let you try.
I'll let you see my collection at home. Then you'll see some exclusive bottles.
Oh, okay, cool. I'm not a big drinker, but I have some exclusive bottles just from a friend that's like a big bourbon addict. Okay. He's like, yeah, buy this one. All right, cool, I'll buy those.
I've got that same friend that got me into it, and he's from Kentucky, so he knows his stuff. Yeah, he knows his stuff. So
the Bourbon Trail.
Yep.
Awesome.
I have yet to visit that yet either, but that's on my horizon. Hopefully later this year. Cool, so we'll see.
Well, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So give one before we close this up, man. Give one key takeaway to the audience. One key takeaway that somebody should walk away with.
Just one.
One takeaway. Give them one good takeaway.
Oh man, what I would say is, I know I said it earlier. You can't fail unless you quit. But also the biggest one is you're only one conversation away from changing your life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can go back to any number of things, of people in my life that have changed my life. I mentioned my mentors before, coming to your meetup and talking to you, meeting Ryan, meeting Pace. joining the community, meeting Robert. Don't let fear stand in your way and stop you from at least taking some action. You always reference imperfect action, and Pace does too, and I love that because that's what I always think all the time is like, hey, this isn't going to be perfect when I do it. I'm going to fail. I'm going to do something wrong, but then I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to do it better the next time. I'm going to do it better the next time. I'm going to do it better the next time. And then before long, I'm going to be doing it better than all those people that didn't do it again.
Yeah.
So don't let fear stand in your way of at least having the conversation, putting yourself out there, talking to somebody, because you never know who that person you're sitting next to on the bus, on the airplane, wherever, what they do and how they could change your life and how you could bless them as well as they can bless you.
Agree,
so
man.
same thing.
Awesome, man. How do people get a hold of you, bro?
Yeah. So find me on social media. It's Trevor_Ryan7, or on Facebook, it's Trevor Hicks. Put my cell phone in there as well. I'm
Nah,
all
you can't
ears all
call
the
him.
time,
You can't
so,
call
yeah.
him, man. Just
Yeah,
Instagram only.
There you go. Instagram only. I won't put that out there, but yeah, I mean, I'm in Sub 2, I'm in Gator, I'm in Owners Club
Cool,
as
man.
well. So all the creative communities, and would love to find you, love to do deals with you, and again, start to niche down on our focus. So you got co-living properties here in Central Florida. Bring them to us.
I love it, man. Guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm your podcast host here, Javier Paredes. Don't forget, like and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't. Drop a comment below. Let us know what you guys think about Trevor Hicks and the value that he brought today. I'm going to be bringing on a lot more guests just like Trevor who are coming in, giving no fluff, giving you the real deal of what they're going through in their real estate journey. Guys, I hope to see you on the other side.